name is Jeremiah with Confluence Fly Shop in Bend, Oregon, and today we're going to be showing you the Annihilator Tube Intruder. This Intruder for me has been a progression of flies over the past 10 or 12 years now, going from original shank flies, which had either backing or some type of wire connecting it, to tube flies, which in my opinion are much easier to tie, and they last a lot longer because you're able to swap out the hook very easily. This is your typical Intruder setup. It has two stages in it, thin body, big profile throughout, but there's a couple things that kind of make it my own. All right, so let's look at the recipe and see what's involved. All right, first we're going to use our Pro Hookguide, and we're going to match that with the Pro Nanotube to create our tube base for tying. Next, we're going to put on our CLX Ice. You can use any dubbing you like. I really love all of the ice dubs from Hairline as well. Then we're going to tie in our Montana Fly Company Ostrich. This stuff is great, as you can see in the package. Really fine fibers, great colors in this stuff, so really the options are endless. We're going to veil that with our Strung Guinea. This creates a little bit of stiffness in the back, great contrast. And then our body all throughout will be this large Mirage Tinsel. This creates that great flash, as you can see. It really complements all the other colors. The Hackle strung through is going to be just purple saddle, and the front will be used with purple Schlappen. The second stage here is created by using this Senyo's Chromatic brush, the 1.5 inch size in purple, with a little bit of Loon flow resin, and this is going to create that stiffness that we need to push through the water. Then we're going to have a couple turns of Senyo's Aqua Veil, and this stuff is in grape soda. What makes it better than grape soda? The very front, we're going to have our lilac or lavender Marabou. If you wanted a darker profile, you can do purple. If you wanted something else, change it to whatever color. I love the lilac with the purple look. It gives a great contrast. And the front is going to be our Brass Eyes. This is just medium size, 5/32 I believe. So plenty of way to break that surface tension, keep up with our tip as far as sink rate goes, and it doesn't make it too heavy to where when we're fishing a soft inside edge where steelhead often lie, we're not going to have that thing hanging up on the bottom. The last thing, we're going to be using 100 denier gel spun thread. Veevus Gel Spun is the strongest per diameter. It lays flat, which is really great for creating that really smooth body. And being that it's white, it's going to have all those colors pop instead of kind of mute them by using a darker color. Those are the materials. Let's get started. We're going to start off with a Pro Hookguide. Slide that on first, and then a Pro Nanotube. The reason I use the Nanotube over the shorter ones is I can always cut it. The reason I put the Hookguide on first is that because everything's in line, it's very easy to do that. You know, everything's going to line up, stick it right on, and then go back to where it just stops. It just has to be snug. Don't try to shove it all the way back there. It'll make it difficult when you're trying to remove it. So once that's on there, everything's secure. We're going to start by putting our thread on. I'm just going to start halfway in the middle here. Nothing too exact. We're going to work our way back to this bump. And we're going to use this little bump to our advantage here. We want to make this help us keep our material flared out. So in this case, it's going to be dubbing. And I'm going to make sure all these fibers are lined up by pulling them apart, straightening them out. And this will help us in the final product here. We got our dubbing there. I'm going to pull this down and start a dubbing loop. So do your loop. I like to take my thread and go around it. This makes for a tighter loop and helps it with getting that dubbing locked in place. We go all the way to the back and move this forward. You can put some type of wax here. I find it's not that necessary, especially when you have that little tightening part right through there. I'm going to put some dubbing in. We're going to spread this stuff out. You know, I might add just a little bit more dubbing here. At this point here, we're going to put in a little more than we should because it will eventually get picked out and kind of moved around a bit. And a little tip for changing up your dubbing or anything in a dubbing loop is you take your scissors and open them up. You're able to get one on both sides of that thread, and you're going to move both fibers simultaneously. So a very easy trick there to get your dubbing exactly where you want it. We're going to pinch this give it a good spin. This Loon dubbing spinner does a great job. It's got a lot of weight behind it. And now I can let it go all at once and kind of lock those fibers into place. All right. So this is pretty thick. We're not going to need all of that thickness. So we're going to come in with our dubbing brush and really pick this stuff out. The good thing with Gel Spun is that it will take the abuse a lot better than, say, Ultra 140 or any other thread really. So you notice the core is a lot thinner. We pulled a lot out in our dubbing brush, and that's going to reduce the bulk but still get these long fibers that we need. I'm just going to fold these fibers back and then start my wrapping. Now I'm going to make each wrap pretty close to each other, and that just ensures that you're going to have a nice tight dubbing ball back here. And by doing that, you're really going to add a lot of profile to this fly as it gets pushed into some strong currents. Might do 4 wraps here, so get the 4th wrap done. And I'm going to tie this off, a couple tie off wraps, 1 in front, and I'm ready to chop this off. I'm going to come in here and kind of clean this all up. We want to make sure everything's looking good, facing backwards like it should. And then here's another chance for you to come in and pick out this dubbing one more time. So that's going to be your rear dubbing ball. Nice and stiff. At this point here, if you wanted to, you can come in and actually pluck materials out to make it even thinner. But I think this is going to be just fine. Alright, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to add our Montana Fly Company Ostrich plumes. Now this stuff is great because it's super thin, exactly what we want, and absolutely great colors. We're going to pull off some fibers and give it a chop here. And the amount of fibers you want really varies pretty big. So if we want to have more of a profile in the water, kind of a bigger overall pattern, I'm going to use more feathers overall. So for here, we've got 8 or 10, but these are pretty fine fibers. And I'm going to make it on one side of the fly, kind of on my side here. Pinch these things flat, couple soft wraps, and then lock them down. Now at this point here, I can take my fingernail and jam it in here and spread these fibers out and make them kind of open up a bit. So without having to create more tie-in spots, I can make it look like I've tied each one painstakingly in at one spot and the other. So we're going to add more fibers here. And this one we're going to do on the opposite side. And I'm definitely not counting these fibers. As long as it looks somewhat close. And the nice thing is you can always adjust them. So if you need to, and say one side looks too full, you can use your fingers and kind of spread these out, move them where you want. I think that's looking pretty good. And we'll do a few over the top, a few on the bottom. And once again, we're just going to spread these guys out, making sure they're looking good. And that's fine. So now I'm going to hold these back. And I'm going to start tying these things back, and by doing this, I know I'm going to lock these in place, number one, but you're also going to start flaring these out. You notice how these are kind of slicked back? As you move further back towards that dubbing bump, they'll start to kick out more and more and more. And so we want that kick out to happen because that's going to ensure that we're going to get the kind of volume we want in the water. So there's the tail end of that thing. All right, we're looking good. I'm not going to worry about cutting these because it's going to help create a smooth body overall. So if you were to cut these right here, you'd have this stair that comes down, and that doesn't look too good. So the next thing we're going to add is a bit of Guinea, and that's just going to help kind of fill out this area and create a nice contrast to it, but also more profile. So we're going to grab our Guinea. In this case, it's lavender, I think. And we're going to prep this feather like we do most feathers. So pulling away all the junk that we know we're not going to use. And then we're going to grab it by the tip here and open these fibers up. And that just kind of lines everything up for you. And it helps as you start wrapping the stuff in just by setting it up that way. We're going to tie this in on our side. And the amount of wraps is up to you. I want to make sure that I can definitely see this hard work that I'm putting in. You know, having enough of these wraps to really show what I'm doing. But I don't want it too much to where it kind of takes away from all this hard work I did in the dubbing and all that. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to tie this feather down all the way. Yes, I don't want it to slip out. It will make it more durable, but it will also keep this body nice and smooth. So I'm coming back through it. If you need to, you can always spin your thread counterclockwise, and that will flatten your thread out. We're going to be very careful to make this nice and smooth because we don't want to have any lips for this next couple steps. Alright, we're going to stop our thread here. Now what I like to do is to grab this stem, kind of hold it up here, and then take your scissor, open it up, and just rub this right down that stem. And you'll notice it'll start to kink those fibers back. And by doing that, this first turn is going to be perfect. We don't have to worry about this thing coming off. And I'm always going to position these fibers exactly how I want it, especially for this first turn, because that lines everything else up. Once again, I'm coming through and pulling those fibers back and up. Perfect right there. Come in there, do a couple tie-off wraps. Try to create an easy transition down for this stem here as well. So now we've got our ostrich, we've got our dubbing ball back here, and now our guinea. This is a great time to come in here with your dubbing brush once again, and it'll help separate all these guinea fibers, kind of give you a good overall appearance there. We've got our rear stage done. Now we're going to work on our body. The body's going to be very simply Mirage Tinsel with saddle hackle over it. So first we're going to tie in our saddle hackle. In this case it's going to be purple. We're going to prep this feather like we always do, pulling off the junk we know we're not going to use. This makes everything a lot cleaner, so you're able to see exactly what you're using. And once again, we're going to come in here and softly, not hard enough to pull those fibers off like we were doing earlier, but just enough to really straighten these fibers out. Now we're going to tie in this little piece of the stem, and once again I'm going to keep this thing tied in. I don't want to remove any of it. Here's your opportunity to smooth everything out. So you notice it didn't quite make it all the way back. Alright, so our saddle hackle's tied in. Now we're going to tie in our Mirage Tinsel. And like I said, this stuff is opal. It's very iridescent. And by using white thread, nothing's going to draw down this pop as it gets wet. So if you're to use black or purple thread, as this gets wet, that dark color underneath is actually going to really mute this flash. And I don't like that. I want to have this thing really pop. Alright, I'm going to use my existing thread wrap to lock this in. So reaching around the opposite side of your fly, making sure that guy's locked in place. And once again, trying to make this as smooth as possible all the way down. So this for me is a medium to large size intruder. You can easily change this up and make it even smaller if you want. Do some kind of olives and browns and make it more of a trout spey type intruder. This one here is going to be for steelhead, so we're going to make it overall about that 3-inch mark. I'm just coming back here and trying to smooth this out the best I can. It doesn't have to be perfect, but we want it to look pretty good. That should be a good length of body. So I know I'm going to have a couple more steps here, so it's okay. There's plenty left here. And I'm going to actually cut this in the end anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So we're going to start with this tinsel now. The first couple wraps are kind of tricky. We're getting this stuff to lay exactly how we want it. Pulling fairly hard. I'm okay if there's overlap. Like I said, I like that pearl look anyways. So this thing in low light conditions, the light, whatever little light is there, really pops off of this tinsel and gives this great translucent look and makes your fly look a little bit alive, which is good. Try to make it as smooth as possible. Alright, when you start getting down, I like to hold it so that way it doesn't slip out and go all the way unraveled. 1, 2, 3, couple in front, and give it a chop. Next we're going to do our hackle. We're going to do this the same way we did our guinea. So we're going to use our scissor, kind of train these fibers back. So take those fibers back. We're going to really try to coax these into the right spot. Now I'm just going to start wrapping forward, trying to keep evenly spaced out. Now these aren't going to look the best starting out, but we're going to show you a little tip to make these things look like you spent an hour palmering it. Now I'm just going to do a quick spin with my bobbin, lock it down. There you go. Alright, that's all locked down. Now, if you notice, some of these fibers are kind of straight up, some are back. What we can do here is just come in and pinch. And that's going to start training these fibers back. And the first time you fish this and all these fibers get soaked, it's going to do this anyways, but if you're partially insane about your flies like I am, you want them to look good right out of the gate. This next step we're going to do is we're going to use a Senyo Chromatic brush, and I like the 1.5 inch wide. It really just builds up a little bit of bulk in there, creates that good profile, but doesn't hide my body that I work so hard to do and all those other little things. These brushes are super long. 8 inches long or something like that. So we don't need all of this. I need maybe 2 inches, not that much at all. Any of the brushes from EP or anybody else, these will be your best friend. These are the miniature hemostats from Loon. They've got a scissor part on the back that you can actually cut this wire with very easily. We've got our EP brush here. We're going to tie this in just by pulling these fibers back. Spin this and tighten it up a little bit. So we've got our EP brush tied in. Now right away I'm going to start folding these fibers back. The best thing for these, like I said, is this here, and I'm going to come in and I'm going to grab this end piece and lock it in place. And I'm going to use this like a hackle plier. So you can pull this way harder than you normally could, so you're going to get a tighter wrap. And once again, just like we did with our guinea, we want these to stack up one right next to each other. And each time I'm kind of pulling those fibers back. You might get one more wrap here. We did. Alright, so now we're ready to tie this off. Move this out. Got one hard wrap on it. 2, 3. I'm going to do a couple in front just to make sure this thing is locked down. And now you can come in here and chop that part off there. And I can come in with my hemos and kind of pull that down and make sure it's not going to kind of jam forward or anything. And now I can wrap over it. So now you've doubled over this, not going anywhere. I'm going to come in once again with my dubbing brush here. And I'm going to just comb this out. You might have had some trapped fibers in there as you were wrapping. And then I'm going to come in with my bodkin and pick these fibers out. Make sure none of these fibers are trapped. If you were just to swim this over time, this would start to slim down and the overall profile of your fly would start to thin out. I like to have a big profile, of course showing those fish all that hard work I did on my body. What we're gonna do here is we're actually gonna pull these fibers forward. I'm gonna show you a little trick here. Wrap these forward, soft couple loops. That just gets all those guys facing forward. Come with your bodkin and pick out any of these hackle fibers. Perfect. Now we're gonna come in with Loon's Flow, which is their thinnest viscosity. And I want to come in here and just do a drop right at the base. And through a capillary effect, it'll actually draw this ultra thin UV resin up into those fibers. Little drops. And once you got that on there, come in with your UV light and cure this. Now all we're doing is creating a stiff base. So it's going to help those fibers do their thing. So stand straight up, and no matter what current you're fishing. All right, we're looking good. Push those fibers back. All right, so now you can see you got a lot more stiffness there than when you started. So that little trick alone will make this fly push water and fish so much better. Next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna add just a little bit of Senyo's Aqua Veil, and we do this just for a little bit of contrast. All right, in this case it's gonna be grape soda. And this has a bunch of different colors, as you can see. So it's got light purple, dark purple, a little bit of UV in there. So it looks great. It's going to give us some contrast, some kind of flash points. We only need a little bit of this. So come in here, one bite, a couple hard bites here just to lock it in. And I want to back this stuff up to my chromatic brush so that, once again, I'm creating some stiffness here. We don't want it to slope out and kind of taper off into nothing again. We want this, kind of big profile in the front. So I'm going to take this, and like I said, maybe a couple wraps with it. Nothing too crazy. One wrap. We'll definitely do 2. All right, I'm going to tie this off on the bottom here and call it good. Kind of wiggle your way through that. We don't trap any of those juicy fibers. It's grape soda. You want them to get all of it. Now we're going to tie these off. And I'm okay actually wrapping over these fibers. So we're going to slowly work our way back. All right, so now we've covered those fibers. So we've got these little flash points in there. Now we're going to clean up all this junk. Anything you don't want to see. So we've got a few steps coming up here towards the end. So we're going to start off by actually tying in our eyes. And the nice part about tube flies is you can make these as short or as long as you want. If you find out, oh man, I didn't pull off enough tinsel, my fly is going to be shorter, that's okay. You can easily adjust for that. So we're going to add some Dazzle Eyes here. And these are just the medium. You can do a ton of different weighted options. You can do no weight if you wanted to. I prefer the medium because it breaks through that surface tension. It sinks at a similar rate to my normal sink tip. So T14 is my normal sink tip I'm using. If you do it too heavy, you might be dragging the bottom, even if you're fishing T11 or something like that. Certain places, you can definitely get away with it. I prefer the medium as my go-to all around. So So now I'm gonna tie this in right up towards the top here, and I'm just gonna get it kind of positioned. Okay, that's gonna be good. I'm gonna do a few wraps here in one spot, and I'm gonna turn it and push it backwards and tie these guys in going the other way. You can really pull back on that. Right, making sure those guys are even. All right, so we've got that spot there. We're looking good. So next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna add our Marabou. Now, if you want it to be more sparse, you can definitely use Ostrich up here. I prefer Marabou because it flows like nothing else out there. It's easy, it's very inexpensive, and it creates a really big profile in the front. So we're gonna grab these Spey plumes from Fish Hunter here. Very fine points at the end. We don't have to use a ton of this. So I'm gonna pull off a lot of these fibers. And even that might be a bit much, so we might pull off just a little bit more. We still want that translucent look, so we don't want too much on here. And we also don't want to not have enough to where you really can't see this stuff when it gets wet, because this stuff will thin out quite a bit. Just like we always do, we're gonna kind of move these fibers back. I'm gonna tie in right at the tip, a couple wraps here, move towards the back, and then I'm just gonna take this and fold it over and lock it into place. Now, by doing that, you know it's not gonna ever pop out on you, and it's super quick. We didn't have to grab scissors, we didn't have to do an extra step. So with Marabou, I want to actually wet my fingers and move these fibers back and kind of get them into shape to start out with. A little saliva goes a long way. That weirds you out. Get a cup of water or something. All right, but you notice how it really starts to curve those fibers back. That's exactly what we want to see. All right, I'm gonna start wrapping this stuff forward. All right, we got a little bump coming up here, so just be careful for that. Perfect, come in there. Give it a chop. And now you come in and kind of manipulate these fibers a little more, get them exactly where you want it. It's starting to look like a fly. Next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna grab some Flash. Sticking with that grape theme, I think this Flashbou combo is called Grape. It's got blue, silver, a ton of different colors in there. This just kind of adds to that, you know, multicolor fly we got going on. So we're gonna pull off a few. Now with Flash, I always pull off a little more than I need, tie in a little more than I need. If I feel like it's too much, I can always come in later and trim it out. Get a bunch of fibers here. There's, I don't know, 10 or 12 fibers maybe. And then the easiest thing to do with any of your intruders with eyes is to fold it, pull it back, and now you can tie it in very easily, and you get more of a V look compared to just straight over the top. So once it's in there, I'm gonna come in and pull these fibers apart, and I want them to be kind of on the sides, more or less. That way I get plenty of side profile, and a fish is never gonna see it from the top and come down and grab it. So you do all this hard work, you want those fish to see it. And we're just gonna pull these fibers back, kind of figure out where we want them. Make sure you're not chopping any of your, working our way back, giving it some chops. Gives it a staggered look. And like I said, we can always take more Flash out if we want. Last step is a collar, and you can use Guinea if you want. I like Schlappen because it gives it these fine, wispy, kind of contrasty looks. And the one thing you always look for in Schlappen is a thin stem. So the thinner the stem, the better, and of course the length of fiber you want. Pulling away all the junk, like we always do. Chopping the stuff off we don't need. All right. All right, looking good. Tied in with a few wraps. What I'm gonna do here is pull these fibers back, lock those down, and then give it a chop. Pulling these fibers back. Scissor technique, these fibers aren't wanting to slide back like they should. So we're going to coax them once again to do what we want them to do. And whenever you're doing a collar, you want these wraps to be fairly tight. Might do 2 more wraps. Oh yeah. Come in here, tie that off, and give it a chop. Move those fibers back. All right, now we're going to kind of finish this fly off. All right. Looking good. So the last thing I'm going to do to finish this fly off is a whip finish. We're going to take UV resin once again and kind of create that final head. So just a couple wraps up here. We don't have to do a ton because this entire thing is going to be completely covered with UV resin. Alright, we're going to take our flow, we'll drop there, let it seep into those fibers. We really want it to soak into the thread. We don't want to have any weak spots here. Alright, and then on the bottom, do the same thing. If you need to, you can take your bodkin and kind of move that liquid around. One more drop right at the base here. Alright, last thing we're going to do is we're going to cut the remaining tube. Alright, one flat cut. You want this to be fairly close. Light it, make sure it's just a blue flame there. A couple touches with it and it mushrooms it out. And I always stick it right back onto my needle. Make sure that tube is open. So there you go. There is the finished Intruder. Thanks for watching how to tie the Annihilator tube fly Intruder. To purchase any of these materials, follow the link in the description, or better yet, come into the shop and we'll see you next time.